Did we lose
Um,
Howard? Oh, there you
Go
are.
ahead and dive into what we're talking about. I think we're having some issues with the live at the moment, so let me work that out.
Okay. So our focus is really looking at the gift of commitment and how it shows up in devotion and how it can be kind of shadowed by this half-heartedness. And that's in all aspects of life, not just, the whole new year, but in every choice that we make, every single day, you can choose to start a new year because time is always continuous and doesn't stop. It's only the calendar that changes. So that being said, our roundtable discussion is really going to kind of focus on this idea of commitment and in a spiritual sense, as well as like overcommitting and the more transcendent energy of devotion and how you are able to more accurately like weave energies together to foster new beginnings and create new experiences.
I like that. I like the like allowing yourself to always have a new day. You can always start again. It's
Mhm.
never like getting out of that it's too late, and feeling like, oh, I missed my opportunity when each day you can wipe that slate clean, and at least as far as, opportunities, and look for the next one and the new one.
Yeah, I mean, one day, one way or the other, no matter what the date on the calendar says, a year is a year. It's a span of time. So, if you are kind of coming out of that winter seasonal depression, and it takes you until let's say March, April is when the sun starts to shine again, and you're finally feeling like yourself, that's totally fine, you know?
Hmm.
Um, but don't feel like it has to be a certain way, because every moment is an opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Well, and when you get into that, it has to be a certain way. That in itself has that obligation energy, where you start shoulding on yourself. Well, I should do it this way, or I should have done it that way. And I've learned that obligation, it can be a double-edged sword, where on one side, when I add responsibility to something that I deeply resonate with and desire, that little bit of obligation can really push me to, or propel me really into taking those action steps. But if I obligate and commit to something that doesn't resonate, it's like dragging my heels in, like dragging it forward. And so, yeah, not having any like preconceived expectation on how things are supposed to or should, and always like having that, okay, it's a new day, get a new perspective on it, really feel out what is for and what is not for me energetically right now. And some things are just a not for now too, like just shelf it for later. It's not good or bad at the moment, it's just not for right now.
I
Absolutely.
I super resonate with that. I fixed the problem, by the way, but I also want to point out in this that sometimes in this, it's important for people to recognize. I feel like there is this missing link in the middle for a lot of people where they will fight for their, I'm going to use the buzzwords in this particular conversation, um, because they just resonate so hard with me, but sometimes we stick too hard in our devotion to something that is not working for us that we become so blind that we can't see that it is not working for us. So I love that idea of like
Mm.
stepping back and reevaluating because so many times we may not realize that we need to do that until we sit down and take that objective second to say, okay, how is this showing up for me? How is it working out? And instead of going in with the idea of I need to follow it or I need to change it, and just going into the observer mode of it, can help us determine, okay, well, is it working? Is it not? And what pieces of it can I carry into my next idea of devotion?
Oh, that's really powerful, especially for like someone that's just getting into it and maybe you get a book and you really resonate with this idea of connecting with a specific deity and the book has laid out for you like this formulaic, do this and then this and then this and every morning you do this and set your altar up just so and you can get so stuck in this formula instead of the greater, like you said, be like observing it, stepping back and going, what's the why? Why would this person say to commit in such a way? Because maybe how you show up is a little different and can have the same impact or deeper impact by shifting somewhere and not being just so, yeah, formulaic, going through those motions.
I'm reminded of Ashley and I, before we started this episode, we were talking about planners. Because as you know, Ashley loves her planners and she has them set up in a very specific way. And we also talked about on our trauma talk right before this one how things show up differently for everyone. But that idea of commitment, it is the same idea. We just have different ways of achieving it. And I also love planners. And in our conversation of planners, Ashley uses hers in a very different way than I do, but we come together for the same purpose and the same end result. Because her brain needs the lists and it needs the different methods of action in order to make it to the next step and keep things on track. And mine needs that same idea, but they're two very different methods of doing it. Um, and so, yeah, when we start comparing our paths to other people's paths, we kind of like block ourselves into a corner and we take ourselves out of that. We totally take ourselves out of the idea of devotion. We totally take ourselves out of our idea of commitment. And Ashley and I were also talking about how this energy is like a woven energy. We talked about tantric contagion, which will come up a few different times. But when you compare yourself to all of these other ways and you're not looking at your own path towards your goal commitment, you unweave yourself from this. Imagine those like two-strand hemp ropes that we see and we use, and when they start coming unraveled, you can't really use them. They're not strong enough anymore. And that's what you do to yourself when you start to compare your path to another person's, or you start to want your path to look exactly the same as someone else's.
Oh, yeah. No, totally. And I mean, it's easy to see someone else's success and want to emulate that and be like, how did you do it? How did you get there? And people write tons of books on how they did X, Y, or Z and became, successful in what they're doing. And on in the beginning, learning that, and this actually applies to all the different like modalities in spirituality, learning how the ancients did it and what their formula was. But then after you get that knowledge, looking at it objectively and saying, but how do I work? And so what works for me and what can I utilize and let go of things that don't. Um, so it's good practice to do your history and study in spirituality those earlier texts and basics and what, others have said in the past, but then we live in a modern world. So not all of that works for us. I mean, one of the biggest just blaring examples is coming out of the age of Pisces, where it was common practice to isolate yourself from society in order to become close to the divine and to strip away all the distractions, if you will, of what was modern life then. But we live now, the message now is as we shift into this age of Aquarius, is can you be a spiritual grounded person in life, in the doing, So some of those practices don't apply. Like, we're all mothers, and I cannot sacrifice, 4 hours a day to meditation and, prayer or whatever ritual when my kids need to get fed.
I struggle so hard with this. As we talk, all I can think about is that word devotion. And that is so true for me too. Like I want to get up and meditate, and I'm really big on prayer and working with my particular deities. And I've been having to keep this in motion and more passive because I'm a mom first. I'm also, teaching them. I'm going to school myself. I just simply don't have a lot of the time that I used to have in order to dedicate to that. And does that mean that I'm not devoted to my path and my practice? No, it just means that it looks different.
Yeah,
And that brings up,
exactly.
Ashley was talking about in the chat self-commitment and self-devotion and how we weave ourselves into that social tapestry. And I feel like that also kind of ties into that.
Mm-hmm. Right. One thing that helped me early on is coming across Thich Nhat Hanh and his writings, because I thought, we've talked about this before, like thinking that you have to meditate and it has to look a certain way and it's supposed to be like devoid of all thought, and you sit very still. But one of his books introduced to me just concepts like walking meditation and washing the dishes as a meditation. And so you're still engaged in life, but instead of like thinking about what's coming next, like one of the examples was like eating a tangerine. I was eating with somebody and they're talking and they're hanging out, and he just gobbles the tangerine, the friend, but he didn't actually taste it, right? And so in the day-to-day moments, making those a meditation and a gratitude and a devotional practice, like, and you could really apply this to anything, like having gratitude while you're, cleaning your bathroom. It's not the best job, but it has to get done. But can you also find space to have gratitude for the accessibility to that bathroom and that hot water, and that you have this facility and this space, and that you're putting your devotion into the actions that you're doing now, which seem like pretty mundane things.
Absolutely. I'm interested to see where Ashley is on this.
So when it comes to devotion and commitment, I always think about we like to really look at things in external terms, right? So just like self-love, my first step with others is always looking at, how do you know that someone loves you? So in this case, I would ask, how do you know that someone's devoted to you? What are they doing or not doing that really speaks to you, that tells you that that's the case? How do you know that they're committed to you? And once you've generated those lists, how can you flip that back and apply it to yourself? How can you give yourself those things? Because, as you were talking about motherhood, right? Like you're devoted to your children, right? And we can be devoted and committed to many things. It doesn't have to be one thing. And how can we honor those self devotions and self commitments to enhance our life, and to bring it more joy and prosperity? And I think that that's really the biggest message within that. I actually pulled a card right as we started, and the message within it was stick with the people who pull the magic out of you, not the madness. So boundaries, that is an act of self-devotion.
I love how that keeps coming around.
Right.
The idea of self-devotion.
And boundaries, that balance.
Yes. Yes. Well, they
Hmm.
go hand in
The energy
hand.
budget. Sorry, I got really excited for a moment. I didn't mean to cut
Oh
you
no,
off. The
you're
energy
you're
budget.
fine. Can you repeat that? Because I actually didn't hear it.
Oh, the energy budget that we were talking about during trauma talk.
Yes. Yes. It's when we talk about devotion, and I found this as I was teaching spirituality. Um, which I still do, by the way, people. I'm just saying it in the past tense here because I try to stay away from the word devotion a little bit more when I teach. And that I actually think is not the best practice, but a lot of it is because when we hear the word devotion, a lot of people take it in just a spiritual sense, and a lot of people attribute it to one particular religious idea when
Mm.
devotion is the act of giving yourself over or giving parts of what you're doing over for it can be a higher power, but ultimately it is for a higher purpose. And the word purpose is important there because, as all of you listening are seeing, devotion crosses the self, it crosses our family, it crosses our intimate relationships. We can have devotion to our friendships, our financial status, our careers. And this is where that idea of really being objective and taking a look at that energy budget. And Ashley said something earlier. I don't know if you said it after we started the episode or not, but the life half lived is so important and it fits right in with that energy budget. How much of yourself are you giving over to the things that you want to attain? And are you able to show up in your entirety for those things? A lot of people get this confused because when we talk about devotion in this particular way, oh, there's this idea that you have to be devoted to one particular thing, and you don't have to. It's all about how you budget that energy and what you're putting into where. You can still show up as your whole self and have an energy budget for that particular idea. That comes down to how much time are you spending. I'm reminded of this planner that I was also talking to Ashley about earlier. There's a graph that you fill out each week that shows how much energy you've balanced on a scale of 1 to 10 in each of these areas: career, attitude, social life, relationships, family, health, personal growth, and finance. And it allows you to see where you're out of balance. And last week, I spent too much time on, I'm going to put in big air quotes, too much time in my health and in my career, which just means I spent more time in those two areas than I did in others. I needed to spend more time on my own personal attitude towards things and on my own personal growth and finance. Those were the three lowest areas. And so I can still show up 100% as myself in all of those areas, but I can take that energy and make sure it is spread evenly across them. So I'm showing my children enough attention. I am showing myself enough attention. My business, my school, and all of these things can work in tandem so long as you balance that energy budget well.
Wow, I really like that. I like that frame that you guys have explained because similarly, I have been enjoying going and volunteering with the school choir and noticing that my other things, my other passions have been put on the side. So my energy budget was out of whack. And so even though I enjoy and I show up fully for doing, volunteer work, um, I have to pull back for now. And I kind of put it in the just not for now category. Like I have these other things right now that I'm going to work on, and that's fine. And I can revisit that later.
Oh, yeah, you absolutely can. And I also want to remind you and other people that sometimes you don't have to work on things daily or weekly in order for them to be part of your goal.
Mhm.
You can make it monthly or bi-weekly and still make your end goal by the end of the year. Again, that energy budget is so important.
I love that. I also am drawn to, kind of lean into commitment when it comes to relationships and friendships. Because I just want to touch on that there's been a lot of like, going and doing for yourself, self-care, if you don't have the energy to do something and be social, that's fine. But there's a balance there too, where I feel like we have to add to our, like you said, even if it's monthly, checking in with friends, making sure that you reach out and having that commitment and that devotion to showing up, and sometimes even reaching across the divide right now and having that commitment to maintaining friendships. um yeah, I don't know why that came through really strong.
No, I'm here for that. That's part of that, commitment and devotion to relationships and building them. There's a lot that I have seen for years. And, Facebook has been around for a really, really long time. It's older than dirt at this point. And one of the things that I saw that fed my own personal healing journey a long time ago were the ideas that if people don't have time for you, then that means you don't need to waste your time on them. And I want to I want to stress that two things can be true at the same time, because what it really is about is discernment of who you need to be keeping in your life. It's not necessarily about who is constantly calling you to check up. It's not about who is constantly coming and knocking on your door randomly. I will tell you, as I have gotten older, my devotion to my personal peace means that you do not come and randomly show up and knock on my door. Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't have time to check on everyone in my life every single day. But does that mean that our relationship means any less to me? No. That just means that I have other commitments that need my attention more than you do at this point in time. And it's really important for us to remember that as we get older, as we age and become adults with families, there are other things that we have to devote that attention to. And you were kind of talking about like reaching across the aisle. Also, there's a lot of difference there. And we're seeing right now as things change politically, there's a lot of people on both sides who are looking at each other going, why did we break our relationship for this? For lots
Mhm.
of different reasons. And it's okay for you to take a little bit of time and check on them to restore your commitment to not only those relationships, but to your authenticity and how you show up for the people that you care about and you love.
Right, right. Yep. Time is an interesting thing, and yes, we're busy dealing with what's right in front of us, but just kind of budgeting in, a check-in with people that you do care about. And even if time has gone by, it doesn't mean that maybe they don't care, but maybe they got caught up too in life, and you just need a good reconnect.
I want to pull some information in from the gene keys because I feel like it's really, really relevant here. Um, it says true commitment is an energetic dynamic felt within your whole being rather than a social requirement. True commitment is not moralistic. It lasts as long as it lasts. When the cycle is over, it is over, and both parties will feel this at the same time. Anyone who begins a relationship alliance out of true commitment knows this truth, and it will generally end just as clean as it started. Some
Ooh.
relationship commitment cycles really do last for one night and others forever. The length of the cycle has nothing to do with success or failure. All relationships form a part of the evolving storyline of your life, and thus they are appreciated for adding richness and depth to life rather than being seen in terms of failure or success. And this is something that I really wanted to pull in because this is something I talk about all the time, especially in terms of relationships, Just because one fades out does not mean that it's a failure. It's going to last as long as it needs to last, to add that richness, to add that deeper understanding of self and others to your life. And when it is no longer mutually beneficial, it's okay to let it go.
Right. That's that like quantity versus quality too. Like just because you've known that person since grade school doesn't actually give it any more quality because of length of time. You could have a relationship that was a great weekend. You met somebody and it was rich and full. That's a quality.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah. And that relationship may only happen once. It may happen uh, maybe you go back to, I'm reminded of people who go to festivals and have festival families where they don't really do anything the rest of the year, but maybe they meet up at festivals and they share that experience together. And that is hella quality. And you don't
That is
have to,
richness, man.
what?
I said that is richness.
Oh, yes it is. Yes it is. And it's so much, and there's so many of us that discount these, I'm going to call them one and dones,
Mhm.
because we strive for longevity. We strive for long lasting things, but long lasting does not always mean continual. Long lasting, and I know that
Yeah.
sounds contra intuitive there, but or counterintuitive, but the idea is that long lasting can be the effect that it has on you. It can be on the memory that you kept. I'm reminded for all of my 90s babies who are with me on this, the nostalgia of keeping the box of like your concert tickets and your movie tickets and all of those little memories that you kept in this box. And a lot of those we only did once. But that
Mm-hmm.
memory is something that we cherished and that was became part of our soul forever.
Well, and you and I, Holly, we took a divergence in our life path for a while, and we're doing our own thing and we're not in communication. And then all it took was like that one reach out where it was
Yep.
like, oh yes, I am at this point again in my life, like let's reconnect. So that continuous too. I think that's kind of where I was starting with this, is that there's this opportunity right now I'm feeling for this year to to take that reevaluation on commitment and devotion and do a reach out and just see, touch base with some things. And if they're still not for you, that's fine. Maybe things have shifted.
Yes. Yes. And this reminds me so much. There was another buzz phrase that Ashley mentioned, both in this episode and before. And the idea is tantric contagion, which I really, really love. I want to kind of give the floor to Ashley to kind of start that, but I have a lot I want to say on this because it's tantric contagion is actually very exciting to me. So, what does the gene key say about that?
Okay. Oh man. You're gonna make me sort through all of this on the spot. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I just didn't highlight it whenever we were looking at it. Okay. Devotion is commitment gone mad. It is mad in the sense that you have to leave the order of your mind to enter the wildness of your heart. That was one of the lines that really stuck with me. Because devotion is, as you said, it's something that's outside of yourself. And as you so kindly explained to me, you know, you use the word weaving when it comes to tantric energy, and I loved the way that you phrased that because it helps pull all the pieces together in my brain way better. So it's this magnetism that you generate when you are able to weave yourself into that social tapestry as yourself, you know, being committed to showing up as yourself, being committed to yourself, being devoted to yourself, and also being able to, you know, reach into the wildness of your heart and really live from that space of just pure love and acceptance of everyone without any kind of judgment, without any kind of constraints or conditions.
Yes. Yes. So I love that. I love the way that you just described that because it is weaving your life in such a way with the divine that you are willing to take the leap into darkness because you have this devotion to self. You have this devotion to make the change, to show up authentically. And it's just like what Layne said about our reconnection. You know, we hadn't talked in, oh my gosh, it was what, like a year and a half?
Yeah, I think
It was a
so.
very long time. And it was just a shot in the dark of saying, hey, friend, how you doing? Because we just had so much going on that we couldn't show up in this particular relationship. But when you have that self-devotion, reaching out, going into that darkness, seeing where you may be, I'm drawn to use the words welcomed or wanted, both by others and whether or not your soul wants it, going kind of back to that idea of maybe it's not meant for you anymore, and reaching out and seeing and trusting that you're going to fall into the right divine timing. And
Hmm.
it's such a beautiful thing.
I love that. I also think in terms of like ripple effects, when you can devote yourself to being so authentic to yourself and trusting your intuition and trusting that you will be led to where you're, like you said, welcomed and wanted. And should you hit a wall, like should, you know, if it had been any different and I reached out to you and you weren't at a place where I was, you know, welcome at that time, just energetically, trusting that I'm okay. It's okay. It's not, you know, I don't have to make it into like I'm bad or some negative self-talk, you know. But being okay with that. And as you walk through the world with that space of like it's okay and I'm good with me, there's a ripple effect that you allow others in close proximity to you to also hold that space of authenticity. And I see these ripples coming out from everyone that you connect with and then and outward from them, right? That's the like that's the magic in it, you know, and the more people that can lean into their sovereignty and have that radical acceptance of self, the more it's like it's okay. It's okay.
Yes.
If I'm turned down from a job, it's not my character. I'm not innately flawed. It just wasn't the right fit. And it's okay. It's a blessing that I didn't get that job then because why would I want to show up somewhere that I'm not a good fit in, you know? Um, etc.
Oh, exactly. 100%. And that's part of like that whole weave,
Mhm.
we I mentioned earlier about the strength of being able to have that woven energy. And when we have it socially, our rope is so much stronger. I'm also reminded of our Facebook group in this because we have had multiple teams with multiple ideas and all of these different placements. And there were times when our rope was totally unraveled.
Mhm.
And it was not strong. And we, I think of it as being like tied around a tree and we're off the side of a cliff and we're pulling ourselves up on it. And it wasn't strong enough to support us. And so many of us were slipping there. And in realigning and evaluating and understanding this idea of devotion and this idea of weaving it within the people who are there and what our ultimate goals are, we have now we've woven a stronger rope and we're finally coming back up over that cliff again.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And weaving also like, like connotates this like, okay, I can do things, but I'm gonna say, like you said that, oh shoot, when you talked about the graph and having, your energy equally distributed, um, because I find that I can say yes to many things, and it's not that, like I can do many, many things very well, but I cannot do all of them at the same time very well, right? So there's a commitment to self in saying no to certain things, or like I said, shelf it, not for now. Maybe I can visit that later.
I like that. You know, it's so interesting to look back and be able to review the different choices that I have made, that we've all made together, and see how they play out.
Hmm.
And I'm reminded in this that we have so much of this in hindsight and we can look at it going forward and understand it. But there's so many people who don't have that ability to look into that objective scope. I'm reminded in this, there's different stages that when we talk about trauma healing, we talk about different stages of it. And there's so many people who are stuck in crisis and not talking about just mental wellness and just about trauma and things like that, but we're talking about crisis of faith, crisis of social interaction, crisis of life. This can take part in any aspect of your life. And as we go into that idea of self-devotion and commitment, that is how you pull yourself out of any of those things. That is how you build that rope. I don't know. I feel like maybe somebody needs to have it like repeated so much about this rope because they're just like struggling and dangling,
Hmm.
because it just keeps coming back in my brain of like the importance of this. Like it is so important for your life. What is your opinion on the rope, Ashley? I want to know what your opinion is on this with this gene key.
It's really interesting to use the rope because I love you can thank my ex-husband for coming up with this metaphor. Um, but I love using it in terms of relationships, right? Because in relationships, there is this inherent connection between two people, right? And our choices and actions can cause that rope to fray, whether it's intentional or not, and each choice can have different amounts of force. So when that rope is frayed to the point where it's literally hanging on by a thread, you can't just simply tie a knot and expect it to hold up under pressure. You have to go back through and mend each and every one of those threads so that the rope can be stronger than it was before. There is no quick fix. It's going to take that time to mend. And, the same can be said with life and our connection and devotion to ourselves, right? And our understanding to ourselves is going back through and mending each one of those threads so it can be stronger. The more I read about devotion within the Gene Keys, the more it just screams this divine authenticity of self as the overarching theme. Um,
Yes.
this just utter bliss of showing up as you are, living through your heart, letting it take you on all these wild twists and turns, trusting that it's going to be exactly where it needs to be in each moment. And, weaving yourself into that that social tapestry and being magnetic, because when you show up as yourself, you give other people permission to show up as themselves too. Which is why, like, when we're recording or I'm doing like reels, if I'm stumbling over my words or I mispronounce something, I just roll with it, because I'm not going to cater into this idea that I'm perfect. I'm not. I'm going to show up as myself in each moment and do my dang best, you know, to just be myself and be as fully myself as I possibly can be.
Yeah. I think there's a big like I just want to like talk to like trust as far as trusting yourself. When you embark on a devotional, and there's a plane going by, I hope it doesn't come through too loud. When you're getting into your spirituality and you're getting into your path and you're wanting to build your intuition and lead that authentic life, how much do you trust yourself? And when Hallie was talking about like being in crisis, a lot of that is that we've been conditioned or convinced ourselves that we can't trust ourselves, and we're handing over authority and opinions and how we should be doing things to others. Um, and it's reclaiming that I trust myself, and even if I show up authentically and like Ashley said, I mess up, I know that I can catch myself. I've got me, and I love me harder than anyone else enough to pick myself up or to, mend my wounds in order to continue moving forward. You trusting yourself, and in that is taking back ownership of your choices, and that radical acceptance that I am the great creator of my existence. And when things go differently than I expected, I get to take ownership of that and not passing the buck off onto situation or whatever. Like those things happen, but I know now that in ownership, if that should happen again, how I can move through it differently. And I trust myself enough to do so.
I love this, and I'm heavily reminded of The Fool as much as we talk about this.
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
perfect for this time of year, also for those of you who are just starting on your budding tarot journeys, because that's a huge goal people start at the beginning of the year. This speaks so much to that energy
Yeah, that trust fall with the universe.
because you trust yourself, and you're devoted to the self in making things happen for you that are in your highest, best, well self.
Right. And sometimes those are lessons. And maybe the emotions tied to them don't feel great, but I trust myself to work through it and to take accountability and to pull back and observe and be objective.
Oh, yeah.
I would,
Sometimes we have to have those hard moments because we are devoting to the wrong things and we're like, oh, shouldn't have been doing that.
I'd like to add, that for me at least, trust comes from the heart. It comes from this space of pure connection, not from the mind.
Mm, yes.
I love that. I love that. It's so interesting as we get into the new years and this idea of new year, new me, and we come back to this idea of self-devotion every single time. That's like the whole theme around the new year, new me every single time. And it's so interesting to see so many people fall off of their goals simply because they may hit that wall or they may hit that ground and it is actively stopping them from moving forward. And they're like, okay, well, this just isn't for me. When, if you are devoted for the self and you can take that step back and you can look at it, maybe the goal is for you and maybe there's just a different way you have to go about it. Circling back to that idea of, not everybody's path looks the same. You can have the same goals as another person, but your path to get there is not going to look the ways that theirs does.
Can we just change the saying from New Year, New Me to New Year, Completely Me?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Ooh, yeah.
I am here for this.
I think that needs to start trending. Y'all start hashtagging that.
New Year complete me. I'm writing that down because yes. Yes.
So I have this really fun deck called the Sacred Creator deck.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like it would be fun to pull a card from it because it gives a good, like, kind of actionable step towards like what like the how, like we've talked a lot about this devotion and commitment and trust, but I feel like we kind of need just like a prompt, a how.
Do it.
I'm
Okay.
here for it.
I just glanced over and it was just like, hello, pick me. So here we go. Okay. Oh, okay. So the card is make a mission statement for your soul. I don't know if you could hear me because my little helper is here. Are they plants? He's looking at my pendulum and it's got stones for the chakras. And he says, are they planets? And they very well could be. Definitely a connection there, buddy.
Yeah, but they do look like planets.
Okay, let me read this quick. Okay. So make a mission statement for your soul. The essential meaning is soul journey, finding meaning in life and work, guaranteed success and happiness. Self-care message is a need to ensure you are on the right path, believing that happiness comes after success, chasing money and material things, right? So let go of that big overarching life purpose thing and just make a mission statement today, whatever that looks like for today. Don't get tricked into spending a lifetime trying to pinpoint the perfect be all end all goal. Just simply move toward what makes your heart happy, and you will be perfectly poised for soul purpose success. Sacred tasks aren't always logical or rational, and they are certainly not going to fit squarely into any old school template or life plan. They come from spirit. You will recognize them by how propelled and inspired they make you feel. If you feel an anxiety for not having created your path yet, that's because you already know that you're meant to be doing something greater in the world. The beauty is that you can start anytime. Oh. So ask yourself, what's my sacred why? Underneath the money, the success, the stability, what is the bigger why? Why do you do what you do? And imbue your mission with passion and knowing.
I love how it just like came full circle. We touched on some of those things in trauma talk, but also at the beginning of this too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
It
it
is
doesn't,
so
yeah,
perfect.
so perfect. So just, it's like we, like I kept saying, like for now, like what for now lights you up? Go for it. And then you can always reevaluate.
I had
So,
written down at one point, for what purpose? Because
Yeah.
I talked about, what are you choosing right now? And it reminded me that I wanted to really like focus in and capture, what am I choosing right now and for what purpose? That's my daily guiding statement.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. I think that is a fantastic way to kind of wrap that up as like it's like the little bow at the end of our episode. I love that. It's it's perfect. would that be, because we're coming up on our hour, friends, would that be the last thing that you want people to take away? Or if there's a different main takeaway that you want people to take away from this episode, ladies, what would it be?
I really love that card. It was very, very perfect. But, I think the overarching message within this podcast is authenticity. It's all about showing up as completely and wholly as you possibly can in each moment, and honoring that commitment to your and devotion to yourself in whatever way it needs to be in each moment.
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yes.
yes. I like that.
I'm I'm also reminded to do it radically, to show up when it's hard, show up
Mhm.
when it hurts. Those are just as important as showing up when it feels good and when it lights you up. In fact, doing those more often, it reminds me a lot of exposure therapy because being a person who experienced a lot of trauma in my life, learning how to radically show up in my authenticity gave me such a power that it became my light and it became a huge part of my purpose. So show up when it hurts because that may change the whole trajectory of this rope that you're weaving for yourself.
Yes. Yep.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. This has been a fantastic episode. I cannot wait to sit down and visit with the energies of next week, because we've already got some really good ideas there that are going to kind of elevate this. Do we want to go ahead and tell people just what the theme of next week is, or do we want to keep it a surprise?
I don't know. I'm here for a teaser.
Ooh, yes. So I know Layne and I, as we visit next week with tarot and divination, we're going to talk about intuition and we're also going to talk about the potential energy that we hold in our beings in that idea. Um, Trauma talk, we will be talking about miscommunication, which will be very, very interesting. I'm very excited about that. And that will lead us into what was it? Was it provocation and liberation?
Yeah.
Which, it does. It takes us into that next step because, yeah, once you start showing up authentically for yourself, you start coming across these scenarios where maybe do you want to poke the bear? Maybe you have to poke the bear.
Or maybe the bear has to poke you so that you can be liberated.
Right, right. I'm so here for this. Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much for sitting down at my table, ladies. And thank you, everybody, for listening to us. We will see you guys next week.